Welcome home to USA Global TV and Radio. Ours is a place where dreams take flight, voices are heard, and stories are shared. This is where cultures meet, connections are formed, and ideas are transformed into action. This is your destination for authentic storytelling, diverse perspectives, and meaningful conversations. We're where global stories unite and bridges are built beyond all borders. Discover our world of education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. Together, we're building bridges worldwide. Subscribe to our USA Global TV channel and download our USA Global TV app. Be our guest or join our team. Visit usaglobaltv.com. With heartfelt thanks to our executive producer, Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck, music scored by Yifei Tang from Cloud Road Music, creative direction by Paul Garcia, and I'm Al Cini, and I'm very proud to be part of the USA Global TV and Radio family. So join us here at USA Global TV and Radio. Make us your home for global connection. All rights reserved. This video and its contents are the exclusive property of USA Global TV and Radio. Unauthorized use, duplication, or redistribution in any form is strictly prohibited. Thank you for being a part of our global community. Let's inspire together.
Howdy, Rhoda Laughlin here on the Wise Ones on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. Just finished up a show called The Corner Bookstore. This Wise Ones is my middle show. Immediately following this one, I host a show called Talking Heads. We'll talk today about how do you write a book in a week, basically 7 days. When I'm not doing this, I research the human body at the cellular level, chemically speaking. I look for cause and effect relationships. Treat a cause, fix a problem. Treat symptoms, and you'll always be treating symptoms. So that's what I write about. That's what I speak about. I specialize in longevity and age-related diseases. And when I'm not doing that, I'm here as a TV host. And today on the Wise Ones, my guest is Don Sawyer. He's an educator, has been for decades. He's a writer, an author, a world traveler, involved in a lot of different things. So Don, please join me. Good to have you back again.
Thank you very much, Fred. I really appreciate it. It's good to be back on the show.
You've been an educator 50 years or more, I'm guessing, from what I can recall reading. What got you into that field, and what's kept you held that long, that magnetism that just won't let you go?
I think that's a really good question, and it kind of defines, I guess, a lot of my life. I mean, I came up to British Columbia in 1969 to go to UBC in a PhD program in modern Chinese history. And I think it became pretty clear that I was not going to master Mandarin or written Chinese in a year or probably 50 years. That became pretty evident pretty quickly. And so I saw that sort of career arc crash and burn. And so I started looking desperately, what does an academic do? I mean, I did work some construction, but, I didn't have any practical skills, like a bricklayer. So I figured, well, I wonder what teaching would be like. So we started working, my wife, and who did have a teaching background, started working our way east, looking for somebody who wanted us, because we really didn't have any plan B. And lo and behold, Newfoundland, which, as you probably know, is the easternmost province of Canada, and didn't join Canada until 1949. And very, very fascinating culture all of its own, but also desperate for teachers. And so, desperate for teachers because they hired us. And so we drove out in my little Saab 2-cycle engine, and we made it into this little outport community. They'd only had roads for 9 years. So it was a remarkable community that was sort of emerging from a traditional culture into modernity. And I was hired to teach the high school. And in the high school, I taught, of course, at the college level as a teaching assistant, that kind of thing. But this was completely new. I was teaching grade 8, 9, 10, 11. Interestingly, in those days in Newfoundland, they only went as far as grade 11 because nobody needed to go any farther than that. Traditionally, the girls learned what they needed to maintain a house from their mothers and aunts and grandmothers, and the boys learned what they needed to do in terms of fishing and hunting and that sort of thing from their father. So school was irrelevant. And so here I was, and yet I must say that the administration understood that education was taking on a new importance in these kids' lives. And I think to some extent that's why we were brought in, kind of as, not as change agents, but maybe as sort of, I don't know, pioneers from that other world. And so it was a fascinating experience. And I got my first book out of it called Tomorrow is School. And I'm sick to the heart thinking about it. It was when I've always felt, I'm always trying to make the world a better place in my own way. I've always been committed to fairness and so forth. But I think when I was teaching in Newfoundland, that I saw how I could bring my skills, my beliefs, my attitudes to a focus that worked. And so I determined at that point, I didn't determine because the passion was there. These were remarkable kids. They had many of them, well, almost none of them had ever been out of the Still Outboard community or not more than a few miles. But their curiosity was enormous, and they were like sponges. They wanted to learn. Anything you tried worked. For a teacher, that's amazing. And even if it was stupid, they'd give it a try. Anyway, that's how I got started teaching in rural Newfoundland, and then that became my career.
And I've been in and out of Gander a few times over the years, in New Brunswick and a couple of those places, but associated with the military more than being a tourist. But I know you've been to Africa and some other places too as part of your assistance and development and a lot of different things. Was that all academic related, or are these other things that were going on in your world at that time?
From Newfoundland, we went back. Actually, I went back and got a teaching certificate. I think I can honestly advocate getting a teaching certificate after teaching for 2 years. You're in a much better position to really judge what's important and what isn't. Then, interestingly, I had a friend back in British Columbia who was the chief of a Aboriginal Indian band, and he hired me to come there and start a program on the reserve, which again introduced me to a whole new area of Amerindian history, culture, really the tragedy of the colonialism of our Aboriginal peoples. And then I worked for Simon Fraser in their teacher training program, specifically to train Native teachers, because they were so underrepresented in the classroom. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of things going on there. And then from there, I moved into adult education, which took me to working in Africa. And in Africa, we were training community development workers, grassroots community development workers. And it was such a wonderful experience because it was collaborative. Obviously, we were working very closely with our African colleagues. We brought certain educational fundamentals and strategies and techniques. So we did have something to offer, but of course we deferred to our colleagues in terms of knowledge and content and appropriateness. And so it became a very symbiotic relationship. And I think we produced some of the best training curriculum in West Africa. It was exciting. It was informative. It was shaped me and really made me much more open to the world as a whole.
So we're going to be seeing a book about Africa, because I know you have the Burning Gem, which is New York City, and then you have the one on Budapest.
Well, interestingly, you're absolutely right, and that's a good point. I describe myself as an educator who writes rather than the other way around. And so, inevitably, my experiences find their way into my books. The only book I've written specifically about the African experience, I wrote a series of novels for adult readers, and these, because there's such little material for adults who are coming back to school that are adult-oriented, adult in content, but relatively easy to read. And so I did a contract with the Canadian government to write 3 novels. And one of the novels I ended up writing about my experiences in Africa. And it's kind of a romance. These 2 guys meet in a sawmill and one of them's originally from Haiti, and they follow his roots back to where I was working in the Gambia. And it's a pretty exciting story and pretty fun. And I think students, again, it's amazing. And we think they're not people who are very, they haven't read much, haven't traveled much, but they could really identify with these characters in this new world. And I enjoy doing that very much.
In your book, The Burning Gem, as I understand it, that deals with the underground areas, New York City and London or something. I'm not sure if London was part of that. I'm trying to think back to what I read a while back. But and then your newest book, we'll get to that one in just a second. But
yeah,
how did you get involved with the underground of various places? Because ironically, there's an underground part of Houston that most people don't think about. And I know in Vancouver, there's a big underground, and in Croatia, there's a lot of places that have underground cities. Seoul, Korea, it's amazing how much underground they have.
I didn't know that. Oh.
Yeah, and so it's just interesting. So I'm curious, how did you find this? And then I want to write a book about this.
Yeah, well, you're absolutely right. I mean, those underground areas have always fascinated me. Oftentimes the ones I was introduced to were either discovered or created as part of subway creation. Of course, not all, but in this case, this was my idea that this massive subway system under New York City. And when I started looking into the history of New York City, believe it or not, there was a small there was a small subway built in the 1890s, and it collapsed. I mean, financially it collapsed, but it really did. And one of the first things he did was to build a large station for the show place for his car. It actually ran, a few miles. Actually, it was real. But I took that idea and I expanded into this full abandoned station that was underneath New York. That became a sort of utopian center for people who wanted to escape, who were special, odd, didn't fit into the regular world, and were attracted to this place that became a refuge for people of all kinds of with arcane knowledge and skills. And they organized themselves into a syndicalist system where there was a syndicate panel, but very democratic, and the different syndicates ran their own. So they had leather making and they had instrument making, and people from all over the world were attracted to this place. And in fact, two refugees from the Manhattan Project create a fusion sun that illuminates the whole place. So I had a lot of fun creating that idea, taking this real abandoned subway station and expanding it into this sort of utopian community that's filled with magic in every sense of the word. And so it was such a fun world to create. And that's kind of where we start with the Burning Gem, because as you know, the whole idea of the Burning Gem is that the guy who's 110 years old, who's a gem maker, what he does is he encapsulates a small part of his customer's soul into a gem, into a gem stone. And that stone actually emphasizes and accelerates the characteristics of the owner. And so this is how we start off with this woman desperately trying to escape this empty life in suburban New York, tracking him down to this abandoned legendary station. And one of the fun things I found out was there's also an abandoned rail line and rail station right under Grand Central Station that hasn't been used since Roosevelt's days. And so I created this sort of secret system of railways and rail stations. And what I enjoyed doing was kind of connecting it to the reality that's really there.
The book, Tunnels of Buda, I guess a lot of people don't realize that you have two cities, Buda and Pest, on each side of the Danube. I've been to the castle there quite a few times. I never realized that I should have. I just never realized that there's tunnels underneath there. It's not one of those things that they broadcast easily for tourists. And even in some of the travel books I had, I don't remember that. So how did you find out about them?
Well, we went to, I mean, that's one of the nice things, again, about, traveling, that you can bring that to your books, right, to your writing, to make it real. And in fact, one of the central parts of the first book, less so in the second book, is the ruin bars of Budapest, which were mansions abandoned largely during World War II, largely by Jewish industrialists who fled. I mean, as you know, Hungary's been run over by everybody from the Huns to Mongols to the Nazis, and they abandoned these mansions when they escaped, and they were allowed to decay during the communist period. And then in the 80s and 90s, young people took them over and they're all falling down, plaster on the walls. And they made them into these ruin bars. They literally called them that, with little rooms where, maybe an old dining room and so they become quite, not eerie, but murky and mysterious. And, they're people in all. There's in one, I know there was an old Lada in the main ballroom where people were sitting in it, drinking. Anyway, so it's a really fascinating city. But when we went to the castle, we did find out about these tunnels, and they do give tours, but they only give tours for like a few hundred feet. They know, and it seems like it's unclear if there's more, that there's, excuse me, over 10 miles of tunnels underneath the Buda Castle. Some of these are natural, but some of these were also excavated. And so it was a natural place for me to locate this nexus of evil, who has buried deep under Budapest, deep under the castle of Buda, and only accessible by this incredible maze of tunnels and the ancient tunnels that were used by Neanderthals, people 500,000 years ago. And so all of that mystery kind of hangs in the air, and then they confront in the Tunnels of Buda. They confront the leader of the evil cabal, whose commitment is, by the way, to convince people that there's a natural ruling class, that there's certain people that are designed to rule, and the rest are supposed to be just slaves, obedient slaves. And this is consistent, sadly, with a lot of Western philosophy, all the way from Plato up to Nietzsche, and shall we go farther? And so this is their commitment, and so they confront this guy, and what I think is a pretty exciting showdown. And so that's why we're under the castles of Buda, and where those the tunnels of Buda, and where those tunnels take them is another remarkable created world.
I've always been mesmerized because you're there on the side of the river, up on the hill, looking down on Pest from Buda, and it's just magnificent. You got
Incredible.
And then all of a sudden you get there, and you find out it's been rode hard and put away way too many times.
Good.
But the food is great, the wine is, everything there is wonderful. And it's one of the more difficult languages I've ever encountered, just trying to do my tourista, hi, how are you? 2 beers, please. For whatever reason, I just had a lot of difficulty understanding what they were saying and being able to do it. But anyway, we're getting close
to that point, Red. You probably know, it's not an Aryan. It's not related to it like apparently Hindi, or Sanskrit, I should say, is closer to English than Hungarian. They're not even quite sure where it came from, but it's only spoken, or versions of it, also in Finland, and I think I can't remember, Estonia. It's an isolate all of its own. And boy, like I had to, let me tell you, I was sure using my Google Translator a lot when I was going through this. But yeah, I think that's what makes it also, it's so, I hate to use the word alien, but it's different, and when you're there and you go into the Jewish quarter, and there's this kind of sense of decay but also grandiosity and magnificence, all kind of intertwined. Remarkable city, just like you said.
We're getting ready to go to break here, probably in the next 10 seconds or so. I'll be about a minute and a half. We'll be back. And when we come back, I want to go into primarily your vision of what's happened in the last decade or so with regard to writing and publishing books and marketing them. And because there's been some major changes, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on it.
Sure.
Okay.
In a world full of noise, misunderstandings, and interruptions, master the art of listening with Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck is the listening mentor of USA Global TV and Radio and the Amazon #1 best-selling author of Mastering the Power of Elevated Listening. Elevate your listening. Elevate your life. Join a global learning experience in person or via Zoom. Reserve your spot today. usaglobaltv.com/book-your-session or drjacqueline.thinkific.com. Join Dr. Kerbeck's listening courses or hire her to unlock deeper connections and authentic conversations.
Howdy, Reverend Laughlin here. We're on the Wise Ones on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. My guest today is Don Sawyer, educator, writer, author, world traveler, involved in a lot of humanitarian efforts over the years. So, Don, would you please join me back up here on stage?
Yes. Oh, nice to be back.
Before the show got started, we were backstage, and I was asking you what's something that you'd really like to make sure we talked about. And you said that publishing and writing and marketing has really changed in the last decade or so. And so I said, okay, let's get into that. It's because you have a product, you spend your time, it's your baby, it's birthed, and now we don't know how to handle it because that's not our skill set.
That's a really good point. In fact, your metaphor, my very first book that came out, as I mentioned earlier, was about teaching in rural Newfoundland, called Tomorrow is School. When it first was published by Douglas and McIntyre, and I mean, I was so nervous. This is my first book, and I mean, as you say, in those days, I hand wrote it, by the way, on yellow legal pads. And my wife was the only one who could read my writing. Typed it out. I mean, we're talking about old, Gutenberg Bible days, and so there was an enormous amount of work that went into it. But anyway, it was accepted, and I was just really waiting for it to come out. I didn't even know it had been published, and we were at a hotel in Vancouver, and I happened to pick up a copy of the Vancouver Sun and flipped over to the book reviews. That's when they still had book reviews in papers. And there was this headline that said, Newfoundland educator bores audience with tedious personal account. Well, I thought I was going to die on the spot. And so it was a really negative review. And I want to say that was the last negative review I got, the very first one. And everything else was really very positive, and it actually became a Canadian bestseller and used in teacher training programs right across Canada. In fact, some of them even had us out there to speak. But that first one, it was like a kick in the gut. So I called my editor and I said, "Scott, have you seen this?" And he said, "Yeah, I've seen it." He said, "Just back off. Don't worry about it." He said, "Look, writing a book is as close as a male can ever come to having a baby." He said, it takes like 9 months to your gestation, and then lots of, birth pains, getting it out there, and then trying to get it, right for the world. And then you push it out the door and it's on its own. You got no more control over it. So he said, my advice to you is if you ignore the bad reviews and the good reviews, because ultimately it doesn't matter. And that was really a good lesson for me. And I still remember that. But those were the old days. And those were the days when, as I say, there were book reviews in papers like the Globe and Mail, and that would pick up a book like that, even if it's a bad review. You know what they say, there's no bad reviews. And so also there was there were editors, in-house editors, which is unheard of these days, unless you're one of the big five. There was money. I mean, I went on they put me on a promotional tour. I mean, that still happens if you're a major writer, established writer. But for people that aren't, what we call not the indie. There's the indie editors, which are just small publishing houses. In the United States, five publishers actually produce most of the books. But I think the biggest change for me in that length of time is that we're now, believe it or not, we're now publishing nearly 4 million books a year. And to me, that's an astounding figure. 2/3 of those, more than 2/3 of those, are self-published. And so you have this glut of books. It's never been easier to publish a book, because in the old days, I mean, for better and worse, you had to pass you had to go to a bar. There's a certain bar you had to go over where an editor looked at your manuscript and said, "Yeah, I think we can sell that." And so there was a certain gatekeeper that sort of screened out books. And again, you can argue it both ways, but it did limit the number of books that got into print. That's gone. That's just completely gone. And also, traditional ways of promoting books is largely gone. They're too expensive. They're not effective. They're not reaching a media savvy crowd, and on and on. So, I mean, to me, when this book, the first book, came out, and I really, don't get me wrong, I'm really happy with the publisher. Castlebridge has been great to work with, and I know they're doing their absolute best with limited resources, but there's only so much you can do. And I didn't realize, that to get on, for example, to get your book looked at by Kirkus Reviews costs like $500 just to get your book looked at. I mean, and reviewed. But I mean, I always thought that you just submitted your book and they did it. So you've got to have, just to even get to that level of recognition, you have to have a publisher with considerable amount of money behind them, because you can't afford to do that very, very often. And so this has become more and more what's going on, that it's pay for review, pay for everything, pay for advertising. And so when I first, said, well, you've got to go on these blog sites, and that urban fantasy blog sites. Well, there's 500 urban fantasy blog sites. Some of them that charge you money to do it, some who don't. You don't know who they're reaching, anybody reaching it. It's just a whole different world. And I think that it becomes, particularly in my case, I'm not a new author. I've had 14 books published. But the change I've seen in the last 10 years is phenomenal. And so for people who are getting into the business at this point, it's just bewildering.
As a writer, we write. As an author, we provide that information, to outside audiences. But one of the skill sets we don't have is how to market a book, when to advertise, when to spend what money. That's a business decision. You have okay, I write one book, I'm a published author, I got my credibility, I got what I need. But then if I really want to be the entrepreneur and write some books and try to make some money, which doesn't happen for almost all of us, it's just, you're in it for the enjoyment, the satisfaction of writing and publishing and being organized. But that money just doesn't come rolling in because you have a pretty face and a nice title on your book. But some people get it that way. But when did you start marketing your book, as opposed to, the Burning Gem versus the Tunnels of Buda? Did you start marketing the book as soon as you started writing it, or did you wait till the book was almost done?
Well, again, obviously, and I did end up hiring a publicist just to try to make some sense out of this jungle out there, which was really helpful, because I just had no idea what was what, and where to begin. But one of the things that he made me realize is that if you are going to market a book and you're going to be serious about it, you need to get it in the hands of reviewers 3, 4, 5 months ahead of publication. And that doesn't happen all that often. And I don't think publishers realize that either in many cases. And so once the book is published, you're fighting an uphill battle even at that point. I mean, these two, I actually wrote these two books as a single book, a single really long book, 190,000 words, which ended up breaking into two for a variety of reasons, which worked much better, I must say, in the end. And I must say also with the help of a very talented editor who I hired, the first time I've ever hired an editor. Editors are always provided by the publisher. And so this time, again, it's just more and more is downloaded onto the author. And so she, helped me enough to get the book published. But then you're on your own, like you say. And I'm not, as you say, I'm not a marketer, and I'm certainly, and anybody can see me as I'm not exactly I'm not the kind of guy that hangs out on Instagram a lot either. So I mean, it's not. I don't have a sense of that social media, how to use it. And then a lot of this stuff, that you read about, and everybody reads the same thing. Bug all your Facebook friends to promote your book, or write all your friends on email and tell them to promote your book. And I don't feel comfortable doing that. And I must say too, my publisher said to me the other day, something, we haven't really found out what works in terms of selling books. So given that, I here we are. But I like your point, Red, that if you're looking to make a lot of money on your writing, well, good luck. But I think you need to find satisfaction in the writing and in the sharing. The success has to come from other than monetary sources. I was at a conference years ago of the Canadian Writers Union, and one of the speakers said, "Okay, I'd like to see the hands of all the people here." And remember, this is a Canadian Writers Union. Everybody who's a professional writer basically is there, or at least. How many people make their living off writing fiction? And so we're talking like 200-300 people in this room. Like 5 hands went up. I mean, it's like a very, very tough business to make it in. But as I said on other programs, I also have a friend who's a very talented writer, and she writes children's books, and then she illustrates them, and then she prints maybe 20, and she sends them to her nephews and her nieces and to her friends' kids, and she's a successful writer. She's a successful author because she is enjoying what she's doing and sharing it with the people who care. I really think that as a writer, when you approach marketing, you need to be realistic about what you can expect and also find pleasure and satisfaction in something other than monetary return, because otherwise I think you're going to be disappointed.
Social media is out there, and some of us have mastery of Instagram or LinkedIn or Facebook or YouTube or whatever the social media we use is. And it requires a presence almost literally daily. You can't just ignore it for a couple of weeks and expect anything to go. And this thought occurred to me literally yesterday. I'm looking at Facebook or one of them, and it's 10 things about something of the whatever movie was there that you didn't know about. And I'm looking at that and I think, if I had a book that was a novel and I wanted to have, a 60-second YouTube video that I could put on Instagram because of the timing issue, I could say, what is the background in this particular book? What's real? What's fiction? And I could do chapter by chapter or, a particular issue. And I think, well, that's an area that I don't see very often, is the use of a short video to capture why did I do this, as opposed to just presenting it. So I think there's a lot of still major open areas to do that. There's obviously a lot of things you can spend money on, but as authors, unless we're making some money, we don't want to spend money.
Well, that's it. And so if you do spend even if you do spend money, there's still no guarantee that it's going to pay off in sales.
Yeah. And so there's a lot, and then you have it as a business. So you get, half a dozen books, you're an author, you now have the ability to claim that as part of your income tax side business. But there's a lot of things there. There's, I want to write a book on London. Well, let me go to London. That trip gets paid for because it's the research that I'm doing to write that book, and it's legitimate within the U.S. Tax code to do that. So there's a lot of opportunities that, as a business owner, again, if I don't know, I don't know. Just like I don't know as a marketer. Well, you should have done that 6 months ago. Well, nobody told me.
Nobody told me.
And that's kind of why we have these shows like this, is awareness and education.
Yeah.
So
that's right. I mean, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
We're in a wide open realm right now with regard to our ability to flood social media. But again, which ones, what time, how long, do I need it in this format, or is it, lots of things still need to be defined. And that's where you need to find that person who has more intimate knowledge on that. So anyway, it's a never-ending game as an author to keep your presence out in that marketing world. And that's kind of where, once you start doing it, you can't give it up, or otherwise it just kind of falls through the hole.
And I remember at one conference, this was years ago, and they were talking about social media, and there was a publisher, a major publisher, it might have been Douglas, I don't remember the publisher, doesn't matter, but she was talking about this need to be present on social media. And this author gets up and said, look, he said, I'm not a social media person, I'm a writer. I don't want to spend 40 minutes a day writing a blurb on my blog. I want to write. And she said, well, you've got a point there. And she told a story about an author that they had who had a book that had been picked up by a real influencer, a major person with a huge following on, I don't know what, TikTok. And she had like 1 million followers, and she loved this book that this author had written. And so she wrote the publisher and said, okay, this woman is going to go on the show and say how much she loved this, and going to really promote it to the hill. So be ready for a spike in sales. And she said, well, we did. We printed an extra 10,000 copies. The woman went on. She did a great job. She promoted it to the hill. And we could not identify a single sale as a result. So, I mean, you don't know what makes a difference. And I think even people who say they know are kind of just guessing. Does it make sense to put $500 ads on Amazon? I don't know. Does anybody really know? So it's kind of a brave new world of publishing, and I think we're all still trying to figure it out.
Well, Don, we're getting to the end of the show. How do people get in touch with you? How do they buy your books?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Red. And I guess that, like you were saying, I don't expect to make a lot of money off of this, but I really do think I think they're pretty good books, and I think they're pretty exciting. And I think that they also challenge people to think about some of the issues that we're facing, and coming together and finding ways of combining our knowledge and skills. By the way, we'd like you to stop at running here for a minute, because this is just coming out, brand new book. It's a young adult novel. This is a Métis, most people will know, are Native Indian French culture in Manitoba, and it's a book that I wrote years ago. It was very small. The publisher went broke, and Pemmican is bringing out. I'm really excited about that, and that's going to be coming out this week. And I mean, all of the stuff I write, I want to write because it's compelling, but also that it has something to say. And this is about how 3 very different people come together to find strength in each other and eventually success. So the next one then, of course, is The Burning Gem, which was the first book in what I hope is going to be a trilogy if I ever find the time to write the third one. And it's really, I think, really sets the scene. All of these, of course, can be purchased through, Amazon, or as somebody said, your favorite electronic bookseller, as well as, brick and mortar stores, because they're all available for purchase. And the Tunnels of Buda takes that story to an absolute. I got excited writing it, a really exciting conclusion. And now I'm writing the third and what I think will be the final book in the series. And so you can reach me, Don Sawyer, .org, or you can order through Amazon, and as I say, or just order through a bookstore. They're being distributed. So yeah, I mean, and I think, you know, people, it's like we've been talking about all afternoon. If people aren't familiar with the book, if they're not faced with it, if they don't see it, if it's not in their face, then they're not going to pick it up and look at it and say, hey, this looks pretty good. And that's why a show like this is so critical. You know, that at least some people out there might be saying, hey, that sounds kind of good. I'm going to look into that. And, you know, we know that over 50% of books in America are sold on Amazon, for better and worse. But there you go. So it's easy to get. And I think that I think people will enjoy it if they do.
Well, Don, thank you so very, very much. I really appreciate your time today, and I look forward to our next visit.
Yeah.
I will catch you later on. My next show starts in about 20 minutes called Talking Heads. I'm talking today about how do you write a book in 7 days. I'm talking about really writing a book, not a novel, but a book, and I'm going into a lot of detail. That is the conclusion for today's show, and I will catch you all next week. Take care. Bye, y'all.
What if one simple skill could change the way you connect with the world? What if listening could open doors to deeper relationships, stronger businesses, and a better you? Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck, the Listening Mentor, brings you USA Global TV and Radio, a space where voices are heard, ideas are shared, and global communities thrive. Through the elevated listeners' courses and books, you'll master the power of listening, set boundaries with confidence, and transform conversations into opportunities. Join us. Listen, learn, elevate. Whether you're a leader, a coach, a business owner, or someone seeking stronger connections, your journey starts today. Subscribe, learn, and transform today.
From the magical world of the amazing adventures of Lady Ella comes a heartwarming new journey filled with kindness, courage, and compassion. Lady Ella, the beloved ladybug and listening mentor, is back, and this time she's not alone. Meet her brave and thoughtful brother, Lord Jack. Together, they take flight on their very first kindness adventure. Along the way, they meet 3 new friends in need: a duck feeling discouraged, a mouse struggling to be understood, and a busy little bee who's completely lost. But with the power of elevated listening and simple acts of kindness, Lady Ella and Lord Jack show us how understanding and empathy can make the biggest difference in someone's day. Written by Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck, the Listening Mentor, this 9th book in the best-selling Lady Ella series teaches children ages 5 to 10 the essential skills of listening, kindness, and etiquette. Now available for pre-order on Amazon. Scan the QR code and order your copy today.
Thank you, viewers and listeners of USA Global TV and Radio, for joining us today. We're honoured to have your time and attention as part of our global community. At USA Global TV and Radio, we believe in the power of authentic conversations, meaningful connections, and creating a world of possibilities together. Want to be part of something bigger? Join our team of elevated listeners at usaglobaltv.com, a space where your voice matters and your ability to listen transforms relationships. Stay connected with us across all our platforms for thought-provoking discussions, expert insights, and empowering stories. Subscribe to our channels at youtube.com/c/USA Global TV. Follow us on social media and explore the endless opportunities we're creating for growth, learning, and inspiration. Together, we're not just broadcasting, we're building bridges and changing lives one conversation at a time. For inquiries, contact us at info@usaglobaltv.com. Music by Johnny Dies. Produced by Executive Producer and Director Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Voiceover by Mike Porter. Creative Direction by Paul Garcia. All rights reserved. Copyright 2025. Visit usaglobaltv.com to view our full terms and conditions.